Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good evening. Maybe good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are around the globe. So, if you can be so kind and put in your comments in both in LinkedIn, or maybe if you are on YouTube, because I'm broadcasting on LinkedIn and YouTube, in both those channels, if you can put there, you can that you can hear me well and you can see me well. That would be very helpful. So again, very good evening. We have a very interesting topic today because the school year will start very soon next week. So if you can be so kind, and whoever is on the call already, if you can put in the comments that you can hear me and you can see me. Okay, there is something in Czech, but I see it. Yeah. I will check it on my phone also that everything is fine. Robert, Antonin, perfect. I see. Just a sec. I will check it here on the. Here we go. Okay, we are live on both on YouTube and on the LinkedIn channel. Okay, so again, wish you good evening. Topic today is school in the future. Katarina, Lucia, Camila, everybody, good to have you here. School in the future. It will be a talk for like 30 minutes, and then I'll open it for your questions. Debbie, good to see you again. Lucia, good to hear from you. Because like 10, 15 years ago, I was part of the different advisory boards. Like for the European Commission, I was advising on higher education with people like Mary McKelly. She used to be for 14 years president in Ireland. So it was a very high level group. The same thing for the World Economic Forum, where I chaired a group on the education on the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And we talk a lot about the model, and we said, well, we need to change that, model, right? And in education, and there's like 10, 15 years since that time, and unfortunately, nothing changed in the major way. Interestingly enough, Shell did recently some study, and they asked big question: what does it take to be for 200 years among top 5, top 10 companies in the specific industry in the world? And there are not that many companies. Maybe it's GE who survive, Shell, and others. And the only question they can, find, or only the answer they can find, if you will, the only one long-term competitive advantage for whatever size of organization, whatever type of the industry, is your ability to learn fast. Okay. And human beings, both individuals and companies and organizations, we learn fastest if we learn a so-called flow. Those are the moments if we do something to which we have great emotional connection, we like it, even though it's tough, but we use in the best way our talents, right? Unfortunately, today, it's still that even though we are saying pupils or the students in the center, it's not. We have all of those subjects in the center, and we try to like bend our students and pupils around those subjects, and should be the other way around, because each and every child is a different type of the learner. Okay. Some kids are learning more logical. I'm like a logical person. Some kids are learning more, they are more like visual learners, right? And they can still, answer the questions in the right, way using their specific talents. Interestingly enough, if you take childhoods of the kids, if they are very small, they are in the center, because obviously we leave them to play with whatever toys they want, and they can figure out in very early childhood what kind of the specific talents they have. Not that they would be that gifted, but they know from the mother of the nature what kind of the activities are giving them energy, and what kind of activities are getting energy from them. So you may remember from your childhood or from the childhood of your kids that you play with some toys all the time, and parents were calling you like for the lunch or dinner, and you didn't hear even, right? Because you were in the flow. My dear friend Bruce Lipton, who is the great in epigenetics, he's saying that the kids up to the 90% of the time, if they are like from birth to 6 years old, they are in the flow 90% of the time. They are at their best because they do what they like. They are very curious. They are asking very smart questions. And that's why, because they play with what they want, they do what they want, they are very curious. That's why 50% of all synapses, which are like connections between the neurons in your brain, are connected up to the 3 years of your age, then like 75 up to the 10. But those like first 3 years are very important. Obviously, the whole environment, it's very important. Kids are very creative, and so on. I give you one example. Imagine situation, basically, when your small, daughter or the son is playing with Lego, okay, and doing the, constructing the big house, and you would come and you would say, wow, I would never build such big house, because in your brain, because you are after all of those, schools and everything, you are like, okay, because I didn't build it in the past, I'll not build it in the future. That's kind of what amygdala is doing in your brain. The small, monkey, the small, guy who is like criticizing you. But those kids, they don't care about what was built, what is there, or how the old construction will look like. The kids are in the present moment. They'll take another cubicle and they'll put it in some, place. And that's the way they learn. And they learn very fast because they are in the present moment. They are in the flow. And in the flow, we learn 450% faster. This is the reason why, according to study from NASA, 98% of the kids are showing high creativity, okay? If they are 6 years old, if we are 25 years old, it's only 2% of population. And now the question is why? The answer is because we are in idle environment up to the 6 years old, but then school is coming, and school basically is killing creativity, and school is killing curiosity. Majority of the schools. There are some schools which they are doing very well. Why is that? Because the schools are based, like if you take the model in Central Europe, it's more or less army since the Maria Theresa. Okay, if you take the models in say Anglo-Saxon or like United States or United Kingdom, it's more or less factory. But we are human beings. We are like everybody is a different, learner. Okay, everybody is a different learner. And those are wrong models. Those are models like 300 years old. Today, we know a lot because of the, neuroscience. We know a lot about our brain. So we know that much about our brain. We are still using. So we are in like 21st century. We are still using models according to which we learn from the 17th century. Okay, and then model, for example, is based on memorizing, and our brain is not linear. Our brain, we learn on associative way. If we are like memorizing the thing, you can do it. It's kind of the short time, memory. You can repeat it after the teacher. You can even receive good rating, but then it's gone because only chemical changes are happening in your brain if you memorize, like really manually, right? But if you learn through the story, I'll give you one example. You can teach, if you are like history teacher, you can teach the history by memorizing the dates of the battles and so on. That's wrong. That will be gone. Or you can teach it as a story and put those dates into that story, because that's the way how is our brain used for a couple of million years to basically process information. Because there is something in psychology what we call neurons which fire together, wire together, which means like neurons. Take for example, Battle by Waterloo. Okay, so if you say Battle by Waterloo, all neurons where you have some information about the Battle by Waterloo, who was there, what were the weapons, when was it, and so on. They will really like fire, and then they will get wired together, which means like we are learning on associative way. And kind of the story is the best, way. Unfortunately, the old model through which we are, teaching is not good. And it's the same, for the adults, right? Because today it's clear that if you will finish the school, it doesn't mean you are done, basically, even though you will have some great university. We talk about something which is called lifelong learning, because today global connectivity, ladies and gentlemen, means global competition. This is for the first time in the human history when we and our kids and their kids will compete for the jobs globally. Okay, and that's why school system matters. And you cannot have, competitive nation with the school system from the 17th century, long run. There's no way. Okay, and I was working when we were changing the system in Finland with the Finnish government, that they have a really, I can mention, they have a great system that can be model for some guys. So the one thing is based on logic and a 300 years old model. That's wrong. Okay. The other thing is why we are saying that emotional intelligence is like 80 to 90% of the overall success, and only 10 to 20% is like the typical, IQ, okay, what is taught in the school stream. It's very important to have like math, history, geo, whatever, right? Well, we are not teaching what is inside of the people. We are not teaching what is inside of those kids, okay? So, and if you don't understand who you are, forget that you can understand other people, okay? You need to understand who you are. I work with people who are like winning Olympic Games, with some top executives, with some, great artists, okay? And those guys, they know who they are, number one. They know what they want from their life, number two. And number three, they can make decisions to use who they are to achieve what they want, okay? Unfortunately, those skills are not taught in the schools. We are teaching kids what is, around them. We are not teaching what is inside them. Funny enough, those of you who are like on this call, Czech origin, you probably know Jan Amos Komenský. For the other folks, the guy is called Comenius. He was a great thought leader in 17th century on education. And Comenius wrote a book, School by Play, Schola Ludus in Latin. And in that book, he's saying basically, if you tell them, they will forget, which means this is the old model we have today. If you involve them, and by involving, he means like the kids, but also all senses those kids are having. If you involve them, they will understand. And what is happening, basically, if the kids are learning through the talents they have, they are very often in the flow. So they learn fast, number one, and they remember for the whole life, because, that there is something which is called myelinization. If you do something you like, okay, very often, because you like it, you do it very often, those, synapses are getting connected in a strong way. It's called myelinization. And then from that activity, it's becoming basically routine. You can do it under the tough conditions, so you remember it in this case, and you can do it, very fast. Okay, that's a great thing. And there is something which we call embodied experience, which means that from your learning, from your experience, you're becoming skillful. You can use your experience in day-to-day life, in the real practice, and that's what we want from the kids, so they can use what they know. So that's the other issue with the school, okay? The third issue is creativity. We want all people to be innovative, creative, curious, okay? But we are teaching all things in the boxes, basically. This is the mathematics box. This is the languages box. And so that's good, okay? What we need to do, we need to connect those boxes. Why Leonardo da Vinci was so genius. If you read some, biographies about him, he was great in like do deep dive in specific boxes, but then he was able to connect those boxes. And funny enough, like doctors today, they are doing so-called attestation in the different, subject. Not only if I'm like cardio guy, I'm maybe doing, urology or whatever. So learn from the other, box. Unfortunately, in the schools, it's not happening. The other thing is that we are giving, and majority of the countries, we are giving kids some ratings, like 1 means great, 2 is good, whatever, right? But this is something which large corporation left like 20 years ago. Obviously, they do also some, assessment of those people, but it's rather, written, and you talk to those people. So if you say, okay, kids, you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're getting some number, which is in a sense nonsense. Okay, it's much better if the kids are learning, hey, this is what I'm doing, well. This is what I'm not doing well. I need to do, better job. And this is what I need to start to do to be even, better. That kind of the feedback. Okay, they should get. This is not about like, no, everybody is great, whatever. No, we should give assessment, but in the way they can learn much better and they can still be inspired, right? I remember when they did school reform in Finland, they told me, we took the whole pyramid of the kids, okay? The best, kind of the middle pyramid, and the bottom. And they said, and our slogan was, we will move you on your best level, which means, okay, if you are not great mathematicians, you can still do some work manually if you enjoy it, whatever, right? Not everybody will be mathematicians, and the other way around. But it's like using your natural talent, and I think it's great. Okay, so, and this system is not taking in account kind of the learning, styles, different learning styles of the different students. And last point, a lot of schools are still thinking, okay, if we take new technologies and we apply it to the old model, we will have a great model. No. If you take the old model and you apply whatever technology on the old model, you have, digitalized old model, which is in some cases even worse. Okay. So you need to do really like a revolution in the schools. And this is, guys, nothing against like ministries of the education or the teachers. I love them and I do a lot of, lessons for them, whatever, right? We need to do it all together because, to do school reform, education reform is probably 7 to 10 years of effort. And you need to have a great political consensus, in the country. And for example, in my country, in Czech Republic, this is hardly possible. Okay. On the other hand, in Finland, it's consensus-driven, country, and they did it. And that's why if you take, PISA, which is it's called Program for International Student Assessment, this is pretty much like mathematics, language, and the science. Those are like 15, 16 years old kids, and they have like same tests across all OECD countries. They are usually number 1, number 2, sometimes in some subjects number 3, but they are scoring the highest because I think that system is based much more on reality. Okay, so now stopping, with the criticism and moving what this school in the future should look like. Okay, number 1, I think we need to involve. We should teach obviously all of those subjects like maths, in the modern way, obviously history. Science and so on. But we need very soon to start to learn who are those kids, to really understand like what are my talents, what is flow, how I differ to the other kids, and so on. Okay. And this is what we need to do. And I'm teaching special seminar, and we are teaching it in Czech Republic, Slovakia. We did some seminars already in London, also in English. And I have like 5,000 kids trained, 5 to 6,000, I don't know exactly the number, and probably 7,000, parents. Okay, kids, 6 years old kids, obviously on the level that's the level of the 6 years old kids, but they can have basic knowledge of self-understanding and self-awareness already. Imagine the school. If in the school teacher would know, okay, that child is that specific, learning type, and those are the strengths, those are the talents of the child. So you can do like specific, learning around who is the child. You take like, okay, imagine situation. There will be like your kid, your child, 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, maybe, would go to the school and would sit with the teacher day 1, basically, because they will know, hey, those are the talents, this is the learning type, we should, do some testing and so on before, okay? And this is what you need to learn. Those are the subjects. This is who you are as a person. let's talk now. What is the best way how you can learn? Okay. And believe me, this is possible. Okay. A lot of, people are saying, well, kids are not paying attention. Everybody is having attention deficit disorder or high attention deficit disorder. Yesterday, I was teaching the class of 40 kids. It was a camp of the winners. Okay. Some athletic camp, all of those kids, you need to involve those kids, and it needs to be interactive, and it needs to be story driven. All of those kids were fantastic. I didn't have any problem with attention, whatever. And they like prepared, said, this is a tough group, Jan, this is a tough group. Those kids are really tough. I didn't see it, simply because I think if you create emotional connection to what you are teaching, and if you have a good story, you can do it. So self-awareness should be taught. That's the point. Self-awareness should be taught very early, so you can understand basically who you are. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what we should do, we should take basically what Comenius was saying, or Madame Montessori. By the way, Madame Montessori, what was Madame Montessori? Yeah, Eva Deagle is saying Finland is so far ahead. When do we learn from the best ones instead of trying to find our way? Exactly. I think it's like in the sport or in the business, you learn from the best practices. This is exactly, true. I see Jose is there, my dear friend. I'm teaching with Jose, the course on the personal brand. Back to that. So we should take those great ideas. Madame Montessori was saying after Comenius, learning by doing, which means like learning, by doing the real thing, a real project. So it's a project-based learning. So we should take all of those great ideas and apply modern technologies on those ideas. And this is the reform. So the reform in majority of the countries, like those, ideas from Montessori, Comenius and other great guys, and technology together. That's in my view. What will happen once you apply great technology with all of that education? Education will become global, okay, and the kids will be able to. I'm a strong believer in global education. When my daughter was in the school, it was still like probably 2012, still kind of the basic school. She was able to get in touch if there was some issue on Mars. She was able in like 3 minutes to get in the touch with the kids. 4 kids from the 3 different continents on the Skype, very easy, and they started to talk because she knows them from like online or from the school in Germany or here in Czech, whatever. So the education will be global. Education will be much more individual. If you take today already things like Khan Academy, look at YouTube. Okay, Khan Academy is exactly those kids. They can learn in specific learning style. Okay, so education will be much more individual, and it will be much more teamwork. Today, if the kids are working together in the school, they are telling them, oh, you are cheating, and they are getting like their rating goes down. And it's this nonsense. When the people were working together in Microsoft, they were getting from me like millions of the bonuses because the teamwork is great. I'm not saying that kids should not be assessed like separately. No, they should, absolutely, right? But we should encourage teamwork because it's about teamwork. Okay, I can give you one example. I'm working with some coaches of the national teams in the different team sports. Okay, very often what we see today, you have probably, if you have like 20 players, you have 1 or 2 players. They can be the captains of the team, which means we are not basically producing leaders and we are not producing team players. Unfortunately, this school system is not, and that's what needs to change. Okay. The other thing is, I'm a strong believer that students and pupils will be part of the learning. Imagine situation when, for example, I'm good in the math and I'm very fast. Okay. So there are 2 things. If I'm fast, I can be very naughty afterwards because I'm like, young guy and I will do a lot of naughty things. Or my teacher would say, oh, okay, if you will be fast with your stuff and there are some kids, they will be, slower, you may try to help them and explain them, how to do it, right? And the other way around, I may be weaker in Czech or English or whatever. The other kids will help me. And this is possible. So if the kids will be involved, like kind of the coaches, if you will, I think that's possible and, great. Okay. Then, and it was already, Eva, he said that we should learn from the best. there are really models like, Finland is a great model where we can, learn. In Finland, teacher, I think, is, like profession number one on the, ranking, like in the mind of the people, or maybe two, but it's a very, very high. Okay. If you wanted to be teacher, look, I remember 5 years ago, the Pedagogical University in Helsinki, they were able to get another 600 new students for the next semester or next year, if you will. There were 6,000 applications, guys, 10 to 1. In Czech Republic is the other way around, for example. I don't know about the other countries, right? So we need to really, the teacher profession needs to be very high. That's in my view. And it's about like, public relation and, marketing that profession and so on. And then obviously to really make sure that all kids are involved. The other thing is, we need to make sure that we should do like teach subjects, but then do like, like cross subject projects. So you can learn. I mean, look, I used to work for the richest guy and one of the most successful guys in the human history, Bill Gates. And do you think that he asked me, Jan, did you learn that in the geo or the math or, in physics or whatever? No, he wanted me to finish that task. And that was it. So you need to use, like cross, subject, if you will, knowledge, right? And the last but not least, it's really how we will, teach to, since those kids, we need to today, I believe that, you can obviously learn about the kids, like observing them, whatever. But if you will do like test them, observe them very soon, so you understand who they are and they understand who they are, there'll be much better relationship between teacher and the pupil or the student, and they will be much more involved. There's the same. Look, I don't see any difference. I used to run a team Central and Eastern Bloc 20 years ago, and that was a kind of the average or below the average team. Once I changed the way we develop people and they were best in the world for 4 years. The same people, same talent, same everything. Why? Because they understood much more who they are and how they can use what is best in them to do all of those things they were supposed to do. And that's the same thing in the school. I remember my daughter, she used to have a lady, she became our friend afterwards, Birgit Ertel, when we were in Munich. 2002, 2004, she was there, right? And she was teaching my daughter. And she was very tough with the kids, very tough. But for some reason, kids absolutely love Birgit Ertel. And I asked her one evening, I said, how comes those kids love you so much, even though you are so tough with those kids? And basically, she said, every child is a genius. You need to learn in what and where. And this is it. Then we started to talk, and obviously we exchanged our experience. Then she moved Munich for Dubai, and she created like 3 international schools based on that. So it really works, okay? But it is about self-awareness, and I'm like shocked more and more that while science about the brain and how people behave in different situations is on very high level, and we are still teaching kids. It's like the method which was created, all of those things were created, at least in Central Europe, by Habsburg 300 years ago. And do you think those Habsburgs, it was a good system, but do you think they wanted 300 years ago people to be creative and to be curious? No, obviously. They wanted to have obedience. That was it, right? And unfortunately, while like in Czech Republic, Habsburgs are gone for more than 100 years, we are still having the same system. And there are, better systems, and there are also good schools. It's not like black and white, but it's not mainstream yet. Okay, so that's kind of the couple of ideas on, school in the future. And I believe that, there's a lot of, ideas in my book, Unlock Children Potential, which will be now published also in English. It's published only in Czech, and obviously in the Positive Leader. That's the other book. So let's go to the questions. So Antonin is asking, How do you see an ideal distribution of education levels in our population? Basic, specialized schools, high schools, universities. Yeah, Anthony, the question is obviously, what kind of now I'll be very provocative. Okay, I was running a huge business, tens, like thousands of the people, couple of billion US dollars and so on. And basically the math skills required for that position to be really to run the huge region for the large companies are the skills I learned when I was 8 years old. Okay, which means basically that I was heavily for my job, obviously heavily overskilled in math, because I'm like a mathematician by profession. I'm software engineer. I'm not saying it's not good to learn the math, but we should basically couple like, okay, hey, this is the profession and this is what you need to learn in the profession. If Antonin, if I would know probably 30% less on math and 30% more on people, how to handle people, how to communicate with the people, how to understand who I am, and so on, okay, that would be much better. So what I'm saying, there should be a balance between those hard skills, and they are very important, don't take me wrong. I like math very much and all of those subjects, and the soft skills. And the soft skills are not taught today in the schools. I did not answer your questions yet on the basic, specialized schools, high schools, and university. I think the basic schools, that's where the problem starts, because the basic schools are really like line by line. And that's what we need to change very, very soon. Because imagine, I think universities are somehow, doing better job. But if in the basic schools, creativity is skilled and curiosity is skilled, then it's harder at the university to unlock that potential. So the basic school, and there is a lot of teachers who are, doing that already. So the basic schools, we need to start with that self-awareness. Okay. Then obviously we, like in Czech Republic, we basically killed what they called in Germany or in Austria Fachschul, okay, which means like učební obory in Czech, right? So those are the things like, okay, you want to be, carpenter, for example, or, something else. You will, basically make your living manually, which is great. I mean, this is, fantastic. If you like it, that's, perfect, right? But this one, we killed a bit, and now everybody wants to have at least like secondary school. Everybody almost wants to have a university, but it's not necessary. We should prepare people for reality. It's not about degree. I mean, degrees are fine, if you will, but if you take today what you can learn from YouTube, for example, okay, look, it would be fantastic if I would have now the doctorate on psychology, and I think I'll be able to do it, right? But I don't need it. I mean, I am like practical guy. I, have a lot of experience how to run huge business. Like for 5 years, I'm coaching some best, athletes in the world, right? I learned so much. And everything I learned from the best people in the world from YouTube. And I'm learning like, okay, I need to learn neuroplasticity. I need to learn, flow. So I'm learning those. So I think the future is really some kind of the, basic schooling system, like, basic, specialized, high school, universities. But then on lifelong learning, I think we will use a lot of things like YouTube, the online learning in the companies, and so on, right? That's what I think will happen. Kamil Horák, Deborah Richardson, now in San Diego. Perfect, yeah. When you want to learn something, you need to be let to do also some mistakes, Milan, and not each company is prepared for that. Absolutely. Interestingly enough, I was doing some interviews for some, foreign press, and I said when I was 30 years old, I just will have a bit drink. When I was 30 years old, I read a book, 7 Habits of the Most Effective People. And Stephen Covey, unfortunately, passed away, or who is American psychologist. He was teaching us also in Microsoft. He wrote in that book that if you are able to admit your own mistakes, that's a great, thing. Show vulnerability, basically, right? And that's what I learned. And, I learned that. And if you as a leader are applying it, you say, okay, this is what I screw up because I did 10 things well and do one thing, shit happens, let's move on, right? If you show it to your people, then you are encouraging that behavior, okay? Bill Gates was always telling me, and this is quite important, how the big guys are working with the mistakes. Okay, he said, Jan, if you don't know whether you should do it or not, you should do it because you can always ask for forgiveness. And if your boss is telling you that you can ask for forgiveness, means that, okay, you will not be fired. You just need to explain why you made some new mistakes. And this is it. And you are absolutely right that some companies are not ready for that. On one side, companies want people to be creative, curious, and so be innovative. But on the other hand, mistake is not allowed, which goes against each other. If you do a lot of new things, chances are that not all will be successful. What I realize in sport and in the business, people who are, it's important, the way you handle success, it's very important in your life. But it's even more important in your life how you handle your failure, because you can be absolutely depressed or whatever, or you just can say, okay, this is the learning experience, let's move on, right? And that environment in the company is encouraging that learning environment, or that environment like, mistakes are not allowed. If you will do the mistake, you'll be fired, basically. And this is driven what I call, management by fear. Okay, if mistakes are not allowed, there's always management by fear involved, which means basically that people are fearful to do anything, right, which is not in harmony with the boss or with the leadership or whatever. And management by fear works only short time. Once people are not fearful, they will move on and leave your company or whatever, right? This is, in general, negative motivation does not work long run. Okay. Teamwork at the school would give us leaders capable of leading. I exactly, absolutely agree with Eva. And it's not like, it's really like working in the small, teams. I tell you, give you one example, what we do with Kate Novotná when we have a kids. It goes like in the morning, we will tell them what is the talent, what is the flow, what is the self-awareness in a very playful way. There's a lot of, kind of the teasing involved and so on. Then we are, teaching them what are like day talents, because they are doing day tests, like, coaching them how they can use it and so on. And at the end of the day, we are putting in 3-4 different groups, taking their talents and telling them, okay, now you have like 5 people with those talents. Imagine that you will create new company. They can pick up whatever is the company. Okay. For example, there was a company, they were selling black holes. Okay. Kids are wonderful. And they are like talking about the fact who should do like marketing manager job, who should be sales guy, right? And etc. And they learn very fast. And this is possible to do in the basic school. You don't need, it's not like rocket science. It's very, very easy. Okay. I agree. Eva is saying that the teachers should be taught about their inner self first, and that they would be more interested in this. I absolutely agree. And this is something I think self-awareness should be, taught at the pedagogical universities, right? To give you one example, right? In Finland, there's like a lot of people are interested, to be teacher, but they need to go through talent tests. They need to show guys that they have a talent for teaching. Okay. Otherwise, they'll talent and passion, obviously, right? Otherwise, they will not do it. Right. My mom was a teacher, okay, in the kindergarten, and she remembers that after the Second World War, there was still like in Czechoslovakia, they were doing those, young ladies interested in teaching. They were doing also talent tests before they were allowed to study, basically, right? If Finland, LinkedIn user is so ahead, why they don't provide more leaders of companies in the world? Couple of things. Okay. Number one, Finnish society is kind of the close, and they don't want to travel that much. So they try to invite other leaders. So the Finnish companies, and it's true. This is I don't know who is it. It's a provocative question, but a good question. The Nokia, for example, it's not like black and white. I'm telling you about the educational system, but if you think about it, Nokia, if there was a Symbian network operating system, Nokia was like ruling the world in handhelds. But then they did not, recognize that this device is no more phone. This is computer, basically. You're doing like 90% of your job from your phone. That's what they did not recognize. That's why, Apple came, Samsung, and the others, right? Why that happened. And that's something which is not good for Finland. At that time, Finland was not very, like, they were open for the, global ideas, but not many, foreigners were working in Nokia. Okay. Then obviously they got, like American CEO, but it was too late. So they did some mistakes. Nokia is like, Nokia should be in the business schools textbooks, that it was not good case. But if you take, like, in general, the schooling system, what they do, and even if you take like competitiveness, they recover from, okay, they are doing very well. But it doesn't mean Finland is doing, everything well. I think Nokia is a good example, and it's not provocative question at all. I think this is the space for the provocative question, and you are right. So it's a bit that they are like, they don't like, interestingly enough, if you would take like all Scandinavian countries, probably Danish people are, people who are running the most large companies around the world. Okay. Then it's probably Sweden, even though they have sometimes, problem to pronounce some stuff in English, but it's okay. But it's Denmark, then it's Sweden, and then it's, Norway and Finland, because the quality of the life is so good, they don't want to travel that much. But it's not like, it should not be excused like that, because once people are working more abroad, it's clear they are bringing those experiences, back, and then it's good also for your country and your specific industry. So guys, another question, if you will. Maybe one point on that, on what I said about necessity to have political consensus. In Finland, they have, if we talk about like innovation and new ideas, they have so-called future committee in the parliament, which is run usually by the politician who is the leader of the main opposition party. And there are like all parties represented in that, future committee. Future committee is not talking about, COVID or like day-to-day things. Okay. Future committee talks about what Finland should do 5 years from now. It's really like ahead thinking. And that's the way they are able, like, okay, maybe political representation is changing. Okay. But we are still keeping the same, journey. Okay. Because if you are like running the country, right, you can fix, obviously the inflation is not fixed by the politicians, but it's usually, I mean, the national banks are helping that, say 6 months is kind of the average. If you wanted to change healthcare, it's probably 5 to 6 years. If you wanted to change education, it's 8 to 10 years. That's why the political consensus for the educational reform is so important to have. And unfortunately, if you have those situations, like if the countries like half, those are like some countries half, they right, or some are very granular. You have like small, parties, like in Czech Republic, I don't know, 6-7 parties are in the parliament. It's hard to find consensus, even though I think education should be priority and should be priority for the whole Europe, not only for Europe or for the United States. But we did really very small progress since like 10 years ago. What is realistic to expect from Czech politicians when it comes to the education, Jan? I'm rather skeptical. I mean, I talk a couple of times to Mr. Plaga, the Minister of Education, and he knows, I think he's a smart guy, what needs to be done, but, he needs to have that political support. So, my experience from the other countries, if education is becoming political issue, then change is happening. That if there is a pressure from society. Give you one example. Okay. Poland, for example, they did some educational reform. Once they were very bad, like 10 years ago. They were really at the end of the PISA comparison. It was really, really bad. And they started to do like university reform, basic schools, and so on. I'm not saying that they are the best, okay, but at least the results are showing, some progress in the right direction. And again, I'm not saying that the Czech, educational system is totally bad, whatever, because there are, private schools, there are, public schools, good, and they are like teaching according to the comenius. But it is a paradox, at least in Czech Republic, that in Slovakia, obviously, if we talk about comenius, that's our, guy. We are very proud of comenius, whatever, but we are not teaching it according to the comenius. Okay, but it is a very different system, and I'm afraid, especially for the countries like Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, and so on, unless we will have very educated, population on a different levels, obviously, they will not stay, competitive, because we have all of those investments, or majority of those investments in the past years are like assembly lines, and they can move those assembly lines. Our, salaries will move up in Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, other countries. They'll move, those productions in Asia to Asia. It's like 6 months, and you can produce Audi cars or whatever in Asia. That's why I think it's important to have, like, I was recently, teaching my course in the laser center in Dolní Břežany here, in Czech Republic, right? It's like, there are two places, like 300 people together, and it's fantastic. This is very high level. There are like 40% foreigners working there. Perfect. And that we need to do more. So we need to also encourage our kids to study more technical, subjects and technical education. Because if you take whole Europe, guys, there is a 15% STEM educated, which means STEM means science, technology, engineering, math, of the overall cohort, of the overall population. It's 15%. If you take India, it's 30% from the much bigger base, obviously. And if you take China, it's 45% of those people. Okay. And like when I was still working in commission, some people were, or with commission, not in commission, some people were saying, but they are not that creative, it's not that good education. But there are some best professors from United States teaching at the Chinese and Indian schools. Okay. So the competition is huge. And I think the technical education is problem, because we are like Czech Republic, for example, or all this cluster, even like Germany, Austria, and all of those countries, we are quite like, technically oriented. There's a good, industry, but for that, we need to have a, very well educated people. Exactly. Montovna is not the future. Yeah, Montovna is assembly line. One of the constraints is that you can hardly refill teachers. I agree. That's why I think we need to make sure that profession is much more attractive, and it needs to go. You need to do reform, and you need to make it more attractive. Because imagine if you can make reform, then it will be more attractive. Now, imagine now there's somebody who's like 18 years old. Okay, I like kids. I like to work with the kids. I wanted to be a teacher. Okay. And you are, because you are already, if you are 18 years old today, you are absolutely digital generation. Those devices are almost like part of your body. Okay. You go and you study at the university. Okay. And then you are coming and you start to teach, and you are somehow, because of that system, in the 17th century. Guess, what will happen? You will, leave. If you take, there was some study, guys, done in 2017. They asked at the Charles University in Prague, they asked people who were like studying to be teachers, They ask them, how many of you will really teach? You know what is the number? 27%. Almost 3/3 of that population will never teach. They are there just to get a title and do something else, which is quite, bad. Reskill teachers, that's possible. I think that's reskilling is possible, because especially if it's connected with some positive change, that's possible. Change the society view on importance of education? Absolutely. But again, it depends country to country, because there are some countries, like in Asian countries, they think for the different reason, they think education is very important. Because if you take, I have around me here, around our house, I have like 3 Czech neighbors, 1 neighbor from China and 1 from Vietnam. Okay. Now, those kids are best, performing in the school, whatever, because they see how their parents were working, very, very hard. Okay. So they are very much motivated and inspired to get into the middle class, to be doctors, lawyers, whatever. So they don't need to work that hard as a mom or the dad. And that's if you take Asia, this is it, right? Our kids sometimes are like already in the middle class. That is like boring, system. And that's, tough, right? I meant here. Okay, guys, is there any other question? Okay, if not, thanks so much for being here. I will obviously save it so you can, share it with your friends on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I'm looking forward very soon. We will have another discussion with my dear friend and the vice chair of, Denton's, global vice chair of Denton's, Richard McLean, on subjects like leadership. He traveled the world, and you probably were there in the past when we discussed some subjects. He's a fantastic guy. He's momentarily on vacation still, but is coming back next week. So next week or the week after next week, there'll be another one in English. So thanks very much, and wish you all the best, and have a great weekend afterward. Thank you.